the way.
There you go. All right, Grasshoppers. We are back with the one and only Mark Puttenvink. And I'll just briefly go over. We've had Rob show enough. I think you guys know who he is. He was a strength and conditioning coach with the New York Rangers and all kinds of other teams, college and everything. He's got his own business, patriottrainingsystems.com. You can find him. He'll train anybody from if you're a Navy SEAL or if you're a housewife sitting at home or a house husband sitting at home during the pandemic. He can train anybody. So great to see you, bud. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Tom. How you doing?
Good. Good to see you. It's going to be an interesting topic today. We're going to touch on, and I think I was joking around and telling you how I fell down on the ice about a month ago. So we'll get into that topic too. But we want to talk about training today. Some of the things we're going to talk about is training through injuries and some different stuff. So well, you know what? We'll start with my injury. So, part of it is when you get hurt all the time, when you're used to getting hurt. Right. When you fall down and get hurt, something that it's going to heal from experience. So it's not some master science. Okay, this hurts. It hurts bad right now. Maybe I'm limited to what I can do, but I know in a period of time it's going to get better. Our body is able to heal itself, unless we want to be careful. If you've broken a bone or something like that and feel you need to go to a doctor, then yes, you definitely need to go. But for us, been hurt a lot. We kind of know what's happened. Many years ago when I played, actually, I tore my tricep muscle that was rolled up in a ball. And from that experience, when I fell down, it's the same thing. I did something to my tricep muscle. I thought, no, it's going to hurt for a while. It's going to be interesting what you say on this subject too. We talked a little bit before the show, but I knew just get right back in and train. And obviously I'm going to have to be a little bit careful with that arm, but I felt like, okay, I was so used to it. I can deal with the pain. I'm not making it worse. And I really don't think I lost too much. And you've got a theory on that too.
Yeah, it's actually backed up by a ton of research. And so what it's called, people are familiar with the term cross-training. And that term now means to us cross-training for sports. So, you're doing some kind of other activity to supplement your particular sport. So maybe for hockey, you're going to play lacrosse, or you're going to some other eye-hand coordination thing to work on your hands. But the original meaning for cross-training was, and now they call it cross-education. So if I have an injured right arm, okay, so it's in a cast or in a sling, I'm still going to train my left limb, my left arm, because your brain it's still going to send the same neurological pulse to the injured limb. And there's a lot of research to back up the fact that if you train that uninjured limb, you have much less atrophy or strength lost with the injured limb. And then sometimes you may even increase strength to that injured limb as well as to the functional limb. So there's a particular protocol that you want to use, and that is to do 3 times 30 sets. 3 times 10 sets with 2 minutes to rest in between, and focus in on eccentric movements. So the eccentric movement is the lowering. So let's say I do have that torn tricep. I'm going to do some single arm tricep kickbacks and really focus on the eccentric or the lowering of the weight and explode back up. So
with the good arm.
With the good arm. So let's say in your case, you got the torn tricep. I'm going to take my uninjured arm and do some tricep kickbacks or any kind of tricep motion. And it's the lowering or the eccentric part of it I want to really be deliberate with. Right. And I'm going to do 3 times 10 reps and with 2 minutes rest in between.
So in a normal situation, when you build a muscle, you tear down the muscle tissue, it repairs, and that's how you build up stronger. So you don't get that effect, but you do get the effect. Your brain is sending the same thing.
You're still sending that impulse, and the muscle is going to react in the same way because it's still getting the impulse. And we spoke a while back about myelination. How repetitive action creates this myelination sheath on the connection between the axon and the neuron, or what makes the muscle fire. So you're still getting that signal. And that's really where the research shows the effectiveness of doing this cross-education, so to speak.
That's cool. I didn't know. That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool, yeah.
Right? Pardon? So it makes sense. And the more you've trained, the more your mind is used to you training too. So it should be even more like that, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And this goes out on a kind of I did also in my research see that we're, believe it or not, just thinking about an exercise fires up that neurological pathway. And
I buy it.
Yeah.
I told you, like, we've had this discussion before about sleeping a whole bit. And our buddy there,
Brendan, yeah.
Commented on, but I do, like, if I don't think I've had enough sleep, if I know, and I understand the science, I'm not going to be as sharp as I should be. So I think to myself, I now need to focus even more, right? Because so when I'm on the way to the gym, I'm saying, okay, I'm tired today. I haven't gotten enough sleep. I know that. So I'm going to give more than I normally would. I find sometimes I have better workouts when I'm tired because I have to focus more because I know that I am tired, right?
And I think that's where the visualization really comes into play too. I mean, we're talking about something different, but the visualization before an event, I don't care what sport it is, or on your way to the gym to work out, is really important, really critical. Yeah.
Right. And that's a good point too. I was actually helping a young guy, and so I got him to get into a routine, like, have your process you go through every day, and you can adjust the process as you go along. But at some point, you're going to get to the point where you feel pretty comfortable that, okay, I'm reaching my peak performance because I'm preparing this way. But then there's going to be some days when you prepare the right way, but it just doesn't work out for you, right? Sure. Like, or you're doing some exercise you normally do, or like if you're a goaltender bouncing the ball off the wall and you're dropping the ball, all this, but you prepared the same way to get to that point. I think it's important to not change your process, but to step back, maybe take some deep breaths, calm yourself down, because you don't realize how much your heart rate has gotten going, and now maybe it's gotten off where you need to be, correct?
Yeah, so heart rate is really important to complex motor skills. So for a goaltender or stick handling, if you're working on your hands on the ice with the puck, whatever kind of drills you might be running. So for myself, I dedicate every morning 30 minutes to skill work with my particular martial arts. And yeah, some days I'm a little bit off, and you step back and you just kind of focus and use that combat breathing we talked about. Four deep breaths in. Hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and it brings your heart rate down. And then the next thing you know, you're back to you're functioning at a higher level again. Yeah, without a doubt.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, and I told you, all the time I played, I didn't understand the connection between your heart rate and how it affected your mind, right? Like your training.
Yeah, that's why I really think that for and you and I talked to Kenny Bigby about this and kind of conceptualizing some of the Navy SEAL thought process for hockey. For both coaching and for players. But if players can learn how to do that combat breathing when they get back to the bench, it's going to lower their heart rate. So when they hit the ice again, they're not all jacked up in terms of their heart rate.
Especially like veteran players know it's a little easier, right? You've seen it all before, done it all before. But those young players too, they get all fired up during a game at some point to really calm themselves down. If they've made a bad play or if there's a real physical play going on, to settle themselves down a little bit. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I noticed, Tom, about breathing in boxing, when I spar somebody who's really new to the game and they have virtually very little or any experience in sparring, after one round, they're gassed and it's their breathing. Yeah. They can hit the heavy bag and they can do all the rope skipping and running and all that. But when they're in a real live fire environment, they get so jacked up that the breathing is really accelerated that they run out of juice. And it's just a matter of comfort level,
Right. It is, man. Like you get excited and you're taking those short little breaths instead of taking the big breaths, right? And calming yourself down.
Deep ones when you're working.
Right. So I've had a lot of people come to me lately with like shoulder problems, torn labrums and meniscus and all those kinds of stuff. And obviously they want to get back in the gym again, but they need to do some exercises to strengthen those inside muscles, right? Before that.
So shoulder injuries are probably the most, other than knees, I would say the most common injury in all sports. All right, anytime you're doing a repetitive cyclical throwing motion, you do run a risk of some rotator cuff injuries, very common in pitchers and quarterbacks. And then in hockey, of course, shoulder injuries. If you don't have two bad shoulders, you didn't really play hockey.
Yeah,
pretty much. And one of the interesting things that I discovered a few years ago, and when you really think it through and the thought process and the science behind it, is that we were constructed or evolved, I should say, from chimpanzees. And they get around by hanging from branch to branch to branch. So their arms are always in this position. And it's called brachiation is the term for this position. And they discovered that if you just do 3 times 30 seconds for 5 days a week of just hanging. So just hang from the pull up, the chin up bar for 30 seconds, come down, recover, go back up. If you do 3 times 30 seconds for 5 days a week in a very short period of time, and I've done it, you're going to see a lot more mobility return, because what you're doing is you're pulling open the capsule, the shoulder capsule.
Yeah.
And you're allowing for better blood flow. you're breaking up some scar tissue that's in there, and you're getting nutrients back in to heal. And I have 2 destroyed shoulders. This one, you probably can't see, but I got a huge deposit here from calcium from my AC injury. And then I got a slap tear on my labrum here from boxing. Yeah, and I've done it, and it's really amazing. And there was a time where I couldn't even put my hands back here to squat the rack. Oh yeah, it feels like a knife sticking right in here.
So what if somebody's got we'll talk about shoulder, this goes for any injury really. Somebody's got a pain in the joint or something like that, but it's not bad. But they haven't really been hurt much before. Should they keep going? Should they see a doctor? What kind of pain? How bad the pain is?
Yeah, I would suggest anybody that has shoulder pain to see a doctor. You can increase the injury if you're not responsive to the injury. So you want to make sure that it's nothing significant that would require surgery. And if it doesn't require surgery, and in most cases it doesn't, I mean, you'll know right away if it's a surgical injury. But through the process of hanging and some other things I could talk about that are really beneficial in rehab. And here's one thing. If you have healthy shoulders, make it still part of your training protocol.
Totally.
Yeah. It's like you want to prevent the injury. So one of the other things besides the hanging is internal and external rotation. You probably can't see me here, but so external rotation is in this direction away from the body. Internal is coming in. So you can do it with cables. You can do it with a dumbbell. And what you need to do is, if you're going to work the right arm, put your left arm or left hand under your armpit so you have a fulcrum point, and you're going to work in this manner. And you want to do some. So if the cable
is that to build strength or stretch or both?
Yeah. So there's 2 muscles in the back that are the rotator cuff muscles, the infraspinatus and the supraspinatus, and they're not really sexy muscles. Like, no one's ever going to come up to you on the beach and say, "Hey, Tom, I never noticed, but your infraspinatus and supraspinatus are
happens all the time. Yeah.
But they're really critical for rotator cuff integrity. And the only way to really work those muscles is by doing that internal and external rotation. And those are 2 really great movements to work those 2 particular muscles. And there's some other ones I'd have to show you on a table, a chiropractic table.
We'll get some videos or something to post those, right?
Yeah, I'll shoot something and I'll give it to you, and then you can download it. But yeah, it's really, and again, these are maintenance things. So when you go to the gym, at least 2 days a week, if you do have healthy shoulders, start off by hanging, especially if you're going to do shoulder day or any kind of movement. One of the other problems that I see quite frequently in what leads to the shoulder injuries there you go. Yeah, Charlie, that's right. Because what it does is it's we're taller in the morning than we are at night, because in the morning we've laid down and our back is stretched out as we go through the day.
It's a really good point, but you talk about where we evolved from. Like, even with the apes, like we were meant to crawl, really, right? We're not supposed to be standing up, like,
right. And that's another thing we could talk about another time is squatting position, sitting.
Right.
It's so much more healthy for you for an enormous amount of reasons than just sitting the way we do on a chair. We'll get to that another time probably. But right now, as far as the hanging, yeah, that's how we got around that brachiation. Yeah. So over time, since we're not doing that, we compress the shoulder capsule. And the other problem, Tom, again, is this. When we look in the mirror, we see the front of our body. So that's why everybody loves the bench press. Right. To me, bench press is, especially when it comes to athletes, here's what I want to say. If you're bench pressing and if you're making this motion in sport, means somebody just steamrolled you and you're pushing them off to get off top of you.
Or if you're a defensive lineman, right? Or football, the lineman.
It's really, and that really, and even the lineman, offensive lineman, that power really comes from the hips. Very little from here. So in any event, so we tend to overemphasize our bench press, our, anterior shoulders as opposed to our So I always tell athletes, listen, you need to, and even general population, if you want to have healthy shoulders, do 70% pulling and 30% of pushing. So 70% pull downs, rows, any kind of pulling movement, as opposed to pushing. And even as we talked a while back about why do we train? Well, longevity, health, to save my life, to save somebody else's life, to be strong, and then if needed to kick some butt. But no one pushes anybody out of a burning car. You pull them out of a burning car, right?
Yeah.
So that's why the pulling strength, and I'll tell you, in my other sport of boxing, when I see a guy with a big wide back and really strong lats, I say that's a big hitter. This guy can punch, right? He can really punch. So
yeah, I've learned that too. Like I think I say to myself, strong back, strong man, right?
Absolutely.
Totally. The guy's strong. Yeah.
You never hear anybody say, "Oh, it broke my chest." No, it broke my back. Like when you had a hard workout or a hard day or something.
I'll tell you what, like I know we talked about this before. I've had bulging discs like a lot of people do, and I had the back pain and leg pain when I was retiring from playing. But now that I've learned to train so much better and train my core and concentrate on my back and stretch my back more, like stretching is huge. And I don't do enough stretching, but stretching is huge for people too, right? I mean, it's like the shoulders.
Well, and this also plays into the whole mindset of training, because we're all concerned about our aesthetics. We all want to look great. We all want to have a really good appearance. But no one ever came up to me and said, "Hey, how many hyperextensions can you do?"
Yeah.
It was what's your bench? Pretty good, I guess. But so hyperextensions and anything that works the low back, whether you're doing dog pointers on the floor or any kind of low back work, that is so important because you have a thoracic cavity between your abdomen and your low back, and that thoracic cavity needs to have equilibrium. And the only way you get to that equilibrium is by making sure you're working your low back, as much as you do your abs. In fact, many years ago, a friend of mine went out to Colorado to the Olympic Training Center and did some work with the Olympic weightlifting team there. And they do so much hyperextension with weight and stuff like that. You could take your fist and put it in the small of their back. That's how well defined that low back is. Because if next time you watch Olympic weightlifters, most of them don't wear a weight. I'm trying to remember. I don't think you're allowed to wear a weightlifting belt per se.
Yeah, I don't think you can. Yeah.
And they're doing the clean and the snatch and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people, for me anyways, a lot of people get confused. And I know there's some support when you use the big wide belt there. Me, for more than anything, when I'm training, if you have learned to push your abs out against the belt, you can actually, it's nearly not as much for the support. It's to work that core. And then you can force more weight up too. I find myself, like when I'm doing deadlifts or something, if I got the belt on, I'm pushing out against it.
There's certain movements that I think a belt is really, really important. But when I see people in the gym wearing a belt to do
curls,
right. or tricep push-up, and even at that, so I'll tell you a real quick story. So I had a kid training me years ago. He's got 4 kids of his own now. Played football at William & Mary. All right, he was a tight end. He was about 6 foot 260. Pretty strong kid. And he didn't know me, and I didn't know him. But he came in the gym first day to train, and he has weightlifting belt. And I said, "What's that?" He said, "What do you mean, coach?" I said, "What is that?" It was my weightlifting belt. "Oh, do you wear that under your uniform?" "No." "So you're not going to wear it in here." His lifts went up. His snatch went up. His cleans went up because two things. Psychologically, he was dependent upon that belt. And also when you wear the belt and you're doing, now again, I do recommend it for deadlifts and certain really structurally dangerous lifts, but there's a lot of lifts that you don't need it. Like say for a clean, you want to be explosive. And so the only way you're really going to get explosive is to not wear the belt because you want to strengthen your stabilizing muscles as well. So that the chain there's no weak link in the chain.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. You don't want to be constantly having your belt do the work that your abs and your back muscles should be doing, right, to build those up. I agree. Well, and you mentioned the deadlift too. Where are you at with the deadlift? I mean, it's a little bit dangerous, right? If you're hanging out there like that. I actually like doing the deadlift with the hex bar too, right? It's more of a straight up motion. The
deadlift, if used properly, I would say this: if for some odd reason you only had one lift you were allowed to do, it would be the deadlift. Because it's what we call an absolute strength lift. It's your absolute strength. There's no other way to get around it. Again, it's not something that you should do if you're not coached well and have a proper 100% on point technique, because you can blow your back out pretty easy.
You don't want to be hanging out. Like if you find yourself hanging out there, you really ideally to do the exercise properly, you've got to have the bar right against your shins, right? So
your shins are not bleeding, You're not doing it right. So what I used to do, because I used to deadlift a lot, when I was back in the day, but I'd actually wear my shin guards.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that helped with keeping some skin on my shins. But again, it's back position. I can do a little video. I'll send that to you as well, just to make sure that you're lined up right. And there's two different basic ways. You have a conventional deadlift grip, which is outside the knees. Arms are pretty much shoulder width. And then there's a sumo style where your legs get really wide and your hands are on the inside of the bar. Inside your legs. It depends on your anatomy too. So for someone like myself who's vertically challenged, I'm not short, I'm vertically challenged. I like the sumo because I can get better leverage and it's a shorter pull for me. Right. If someone's taller, they may want to go with the conventional. So there's a little bit of anatomy that factors in.
But you got to be warmed up, right, to do that. I mean, you've got to stretch out your hamstring and your back.
It's one of those lifts, Tom. It's not a high rep movement. Right. I would say ideally nothing more than 5 reps for sure. Yeah. You want to warm up. You don't want to use the deadlift to warm up for the deadlift. You want to do some other dynamic movement to warm up to do the deadlift.
See, that's a good point. I like that you touched on that. So sometimes you and I know this isn't always about training, but sometimes you want to see what your max is, right? So guys will try their max, and the theory is like do a whole bunch of deadlifting to warm up and then go deadlift your max. Well, you really don't need to do that, right? In fact, that's kind of defeats the purpose. You really don't know if that's your max because now you're tired yourself out. So do something else to warm up.
So the Bulgarian weightlifting protocols that I used a lot with myself and also people I trained over the years it's a little different because they would lift for the whole day. But what they would do is like they'd warm up. So they were only doing the snatch and a clean, right, for Olympics. But they'd warm up three times, I think 3 times 3 at 75%, and then they would do a double. That was it. They'd come back an hour later and repeat the process. Now it's different because they're doing this. This is their job. But you can take that mindset and incorporate it into your workout. So you warm up, and then when you go to do your deadlifts, you're just doing doubles. But you're doing doubles at like 75 to 85% of your max. And over a period of time, and there's a specific protocol, I'll email it to you. You'll increase after about, I think it's like 6 weeks, you'll put about another 5% on your max.
Right.
So a lot of people will say, Mark, well, how do I determine now what my current 1 rep max is without trying to go in there and risk blowing out my back or getting injured? Very, very simple. Whatever movement you're doing, let's pick the squat, for instance. Whatever you can do 10 reps, where 11 and 12 are really going to be difficult, that 10 reps represents 70% of your 1 rep max. So take that number, say it's 225, for instance, and multiply it by 1.3, you're going to come up with, I think, 300, which would be your current 1 rep max. Pretty accurate. Cool. And then you use that number to make all your adjustments when you're making your when you're putting your protocol together.
Yeah, I haven't done it in a while, but probably like 4 or 5 years ago, I was doing the West Side Barbell training. Right?
Yeah, Louis Simmons. Yeah.
Right. So basically, that is you're trying to strengthen your bench press, your squat, your deadlift, all that, but you're doing other exercises around it. But so twice a week you'll go heavy weight, low reps on upper body, lower body, and then twice a week you'll go speed, the same exercise at the speed, right? So way lighter weight, but if you really got to slam it out, like if you're doing the bench press, you put probably like 40% of your max.
Yeah, so
bang the quick ones out.
Speed work is really important because it's the neurological component of lifting. When you're doing your speed work, you're learning to be explosive, right? Yeah. And Louis Simmons, I don't know how many world champions he's put out in the powerlifting community. I've lost track. He's been so successful. But yeah, that's how they use. So, and even when you're looking at your, when you're mapping out your training, you're going to go medium, heavy, light. We talked about this in the past. It's not a linear progression. You go up a couple steps, level off. You may go down a step, but then you go up 3 more. Now your 3rd level step is higher than your previous 3rd level step, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Right. So somebody's there. A lot of times people ask too that they're trying to get better at the bench press or squat or deadlift, and they get kind of plateaued at a certain weight. They've been going up and up of the max all the time, and they're plateauing. What do you tell them when they get to that point? What can they do?
Take some time off.
Take some time off?
Yeah. Take a week off. readjust, take a look at your training, see where maybe you need to, again, not everything is going to work continuously. You may need to change your protocol, right? I mean, there's certain things that always will remain the same, but there's certain things you could adjust. So you can't, so in other words, that Bulgarian method, you can't do that year round. You got to change it up a little bit here and there.
Beat your body up too, yeah, definitely. All right, there, Patriot Training Systems, Mr. Mark Puttenvik again. So you trained the Rangers? Weren't you up at New England Patriots for a while too? Weren't you working up there?
Yeah. So Bill Parisi and I went up there in '94 or '95, and Bill Parcells was the head coach there at the time. And so football is a little different. They don't have a strength coach. They have a strength coach, and he usually has 2 or 3 assistants. And Johnny was really good at everything. Johnny Parker, who went up to New England from the Giants with Bill Parcells. He's been with Bill for quite a while. He was great at everything. He didn't feel strong enough in the speed and quickness part of the training. So he brought Bill and I in to put that whole program together, and we laid it all out for him. And
good. And you've trained the guys up at West Point too?
I'm one of the 3 boxing coaches up at West Point Army Boxing. Yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So again, and don't be intimidated, men and women out there too. If your conditioning level isn't, like a professional athlete or something, Mark can certainly help you with that stuff too. So again, it's patriottrainingsystems.com.
Yes, sir. Great
Studley, Mark Puttenvik. Good to have you again, bud.
Always a pleasure, Tom.
See you next week.
All right, buddy. Thanks.